There are 17 elements on the periodic table that you've probably never heard of. Neodymium, dysprosium, lanthanum, cerium, terbium, scandium, europium. They sound like alien words, but they built your world. They make your phone light up when you touch it. They make your car move silently. They power satellites, MRI scanners, and weapons you'll never see. 17 obscure metals that turn modern civilization into a technological miracle and a hostage. The irony? We created this dependence ourselves. On October 9th, 2025, Beijing quietly changed the rules. New export controls, tightened permits, stricter government approval processes. If a product anywhere in the world uses Chinese rare earth materials, and most, do you now need Chinese government approval to sell it? That means from the smallest smartphone to the most advanced jet engine, Beijing holds the final stamp. This isn't trade policy. It's power disguised as paperwork. Because when one country controls 90% of the critical elements that keep every other country's technology alive, that is not competition. That's command. It's leverage. It's control. And it's exactly the kind of invisible weapon empires dream about. In 1992, Deng Xiaoping said, "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths." It wasn't a prediction, it was a declaration of intent, a statement of strategic vision that would reshape global power for decades. The West heard it and laughed. Mining rare earths was toxic, messy, expensive, environmentally devastating, politically unpopular. Politicians loved cheap imports, corporations loved cheap processing, and consumers loved cheap gadgets. Efficiency, they called it, but efficient was code for dependent. While the West chased quarterly profits and Wall Street bonuses, China built the mines, mastered the refining, subsidized the entire supply chain, and patiently captured market share. They turned pollution into policy and dependency into dominance. Today, that strategy, decades in the making, matured into an economic weapon, so precise it doesn't blow things up. It just makes them unaffordable. Think of this. If China shuts off supply tomorrow, the U.S. can't build F-35 fighters. Europe can't make wind turbines. Apple can't make phones. Tesla can't make cars. The Pentagon would be paralyzed. Silicon Valley mute. And you? You'd pay the ransom in every price tag you see. Your grocery bill, your electricity, your child's future. It's not the first time a resource became a weapon. 52 years ago, in 1973, the OPEC nations realized something terrifyingly effective. They didn't need bombs to control global policy. They just had to close the tap. One decision. The oil embargo quadrupled prices overnight. Inflation exploded. Factories stopped. Gas lines stretched for miles. Governments begged. Citizens panicked. The world learned that whoever controls supply controls destiny, and could reshape the entire global order with a single embargo. Now, history repeats itself. Different resource, same lesson. But this time it's worse. Oil powered the 20th century, but people could eventually adapt, find alternatives, drill new wells, develop efficiency. Rare earths power the 21st. They're in every device, every defense system, every digital dream. They're not alternatives to one another. They're irreplaceable. Remove them and everything goes dark. That's not a figure of speech. It's physics. It's chemistry. It's the base layer of modern civilization. So what changed on October 9th? This wasn't China flexing for fun. It was a move in a longer game, a carefully orchestrated escalation. Because on October 30th, just days from now, President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping will meet in Seoul. Officially, it's about trade talks and tariffs. Unofficially, It's a showdown over who controls the future's raw materials and, therefore, who controls the 21st century itself. China's counter is simpler and more elegant. Rare earth export licenses temporarily suspended. The U.S. has tariffs ready 100% across the board on Chinese tech imports. A sledgehammer dot, pretend diplomacy all you want for both men. This isn't about economics. It's about leverage. It's about power. Because Trump can tariff iPhones, but she can make them impossible to build. She holds the element supply. Trump holds the market. One controls the atoms. The other controls the money. Neither can afford to back down. Want to know the worst part? China didn't hide any of this. Western economists did. For 30 years, think tanks called global supply chains a miracle of efficiency. Economists published papers about comparative advantage. Interdependence, they said, promotes peace. Spoiler, it doesn't. It promotes paralysis. It promotes exactly this moment. Interdependence doesn't mean equality. It means one side can't breathe without the other's permission. The experts said cheaper parts meant a stronger economy. They just didn't say whose. The financial gains went one direction. The strategic vulnerability went the other. So congratulations, your standard of living was built on a strategic dependency that now bills you interest every time you upgrade your device. They called it globalization. You call it your grocery bill doubling. Funny how prosperity always ends up costing most when it's time to pay for it. Funny how the bill comes due. If you're still watching, you already know something's wrong. You feel it deep. The system doesn't add up. Good. That instinct is right. Now subscribe, because every video on this channel is a piece of the puzzle. How they built this trap, how they keep it running, and how you can see it before it collapses. Start collecting the pieces now. Because to understand this moment, you need to understand that history isn't random, it's engineered repetition. The same pattern runs over and over, slightly repackaged, with new names and dates. Let's go deeper. Rare earths aren't actually rare. They're everywhere in soils, sediments, ocean beds, even your backyard. Refining them requires dangerous chemicals, intense heat, incredible patience, and environmental sacrifice that few countries are willing to make anymore. The problem is they're extraordinarily hard to isolate from other minerals. The West abandoned that kind of industrial grit in pursuit of comfort. China perfected it in pursuit of power. Between 1985 and 2005, they undercut global competitors, kept prices artificially low, quietly bought up patents, and absorbed all the environmental cost into their system. By the time anyone noticed what was happening, they didn't just dominate supply, they owned the knowledge, they owned the infrastructure, they owned the capacity. The United States tried reopening mines like California's Mountain Pass, once the world's largest rare earth operation. But even now it ships raw ore to China for processing. It's like having the world's best kitchen, but asking your rival to cook. You still depend on them. You're still vulnerable. And then there's the debt trap nobody talks about. Western corporations made record profits by outsourcing to China. Quarterly earnings soared. Stock prices climbed. Executive bonuses hit the stratosphere. But those savings came with invisible liabilities, strategic dependence. Cheap goods hid higher risks. And when those risks finally surface, like now, the irony is bitter. We celebrated cheap labor for so long we forgot it came with expensive consequences. America traded independence for convenience. Europe traded industry for ideology and environmental purity that they couldn't maintain industrially. Consumers traded sovereignty for 2-day shipping and cheaper phones. Corporate greed and political amnesia joined hands and built the cage we're in now. The door locked decades ago. The consequences stretch far beyond consumer costs. This is about security. This is about power. The magnets inside an F-35 jet contain over 900 pounds of rare earth metals. Modern missiles need samarium cobalt alloys for their guidance systems. Night vision goggles require yttrium for their optical elements. It's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about keeping the defense grid alive. When Xi Jinping tightened exports last month, Pentagon analysts called emergency meetings. Classified meetings. They didn't disclose what they discussed. But the last time China blocked shipments in 2010 against Japan over a geopolitical dispute, Tokyo S-Tech sector collapsed within months. Supply dried up. Factories shut down. The economy stumbled. This time the stakes are global. If Beijing throttles exports again, the West's military-industrial complex doesn't fight wars. It fights for parts. It fights for survival. Meanwhile, Western media calls this trade tension. That's like calling the Titanic a ship in delay, a catastrophic understatement. What we're seeing isn't tension, it's realignment. The fundamental restructuring of global power. The U.S. built financial dominance by controlling currency through reserve status and military might. China is building material power by controlling the elements that make everything work. The dollar ruled through debt mechanisms and financial leverage. The yuan rules through resources, through atoms, through supply. It's not ideology, it's math. You can print money infinitely. You can't print neodymium. You can't manufacture dysprosium in a lab. They exist in fixed quantities, controlled by geography. And right now, geography favors Beijing. 3 scenarios now exist for what happens after October 30th. 1. A compromise. Both sides smile for cameras, announce a deal, tariffs delayed, controls softened, investors breathe relief. Temporary peace. Markets rally. Crisis delayed. 2. Deadlock. Talks stall over fundamental disagreements about terms. Neither side gives ground. Trump's tariffs proceed on November 1st. China activates export restrictions.
Trump's tariffs proceed on November 1st. China activates export restrictions.
Prices rise quietly but constantly. Supply tightens gradually. The world adjusts painfully, stagflation. 3. Rupture. The meeting collapses. Accusations fly. Trump walks out angry. China responds by banning all rare earth exports. Global supply chains shatter overnight. Production halts within weeks. Inflation spikes beyond anything we've seen. Markets crash. Unemployment rises. Recession begins. Which one wins? History says the third. Because when two empires compete for control of the same finite resource, compromise is temporary. Conflict is inevitable. The math says scenario 3. You might wonder, can't America just mine its own? Sure, mine more. But mining without refining is like harvesting oil you can't refine into gasoline. It's useless. It's logistics, not geology. Experts estimate that rebuilding a full rare earth supply chain, domestically mining, refining, manufacturing, distribution, would take 5 to 10 years and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. China can halt supply in 5 minutes. And that's the imbalance years of catch-up against a switch that flips instantly. The Cold War had nuclear deterrence keeping the peace. This one has supply deterrence, mutually assured economic destruction. Except one side needs the other more than the reverse. That imbalance is everything. And here is the quiet truth nobody in Congress will say out loud. The corporations that built this clockwork dependency are the same ones now lobbying for subsidies to escape it. They profit coming and going first from outsourcing to China, capturing cheap labor and cheap refining, Now from reshoring initiatives that come with government checks. That's not policy failure. That's policy as product. Lobby, outsource, panic, rebuild, profit, repeat. You can almost admire the efficiency, almost. But what you really see is a machine designed to extract value from you, the consumer, the taxpayer, the voter, while the benefits flow upward to capital. This crisis didn't begin with China's policies. It began with our amnesia. Every century, civilizations forget how their prosperity was built on control over material. Rome controlled gold, which gave them power. Britain controlled coal, which powered the Industrial Revolution and the British Empire. America controlled oil, which built the post-war global order. China chose rare earths. The resource changes. The principle never does. Control the base layer of technology, and you control every layer above it. Apps, weapons, energy, privacy, freedom, all subordinate to material reality. You can't have digital sovereignty without elemental sovereignty. The lesson repeats through history, and we keep forgetting it. Dark humor alert. Economists keep talking about de-risking supply chains and building resilience. They sound like gamblers pretending they can quit any time. This time will be different, they say. Spoiler, it won't. They won't, because risk isn't the problem. Dependency is, and dependency can't be diversified. It can't be hedged. It can only be cured by sovereignty, something we traded away a long time ago for cheaper electronics and the illusion of endless abundance. But abundance built on dependency isn't wealth. It's debt with a prettier label. We just didn't want to admit it got, so what happens next? Maybe this crisis forces Western rediscovery of self-sufficiency. Maybe nations finally rebuild real industries, not just financial derivatives and service economies. Maybe governments remember that actual production is cheaper than dependency control by others. Or maybe we just repeat history again. Pretend the problem is fixed until the next shock explodes the illusion. Either way, the rare earth war is already here. It just doesn't look like war. No tanks, no bombs, no declarations. Just spreadsheets, customs forms, and price tags. Quiet battles that decide who gets to manufacture the future and who has to buy it at triple the cost, or not at all. 17 elements. Strange names. Metallic. Invisible to the untrained eye, but they power everything visible in your life, your world, your technology, your freedom. One country controls them all. The rest of the world pretended it didn't matter until it mattered catastrophically. It matters now, because this isn't just economics or trade. It's leverage at the atomic level. Every phone, every car, every satellite, every weapon, all collateral. When you depend on someone else for the literal building blocks of progress, independence becomes an illusion. Power flows to the supplier. The oil crisis of 1973 taught that to the world. The rare earth war of 2025 is teaching it again, this time digitally, globally, and permanently. The lesson is being written in price tags. If you learned something today, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, for your awareness, for your survival. Because the next world war won't be fought over territory or ideology. It'll be fought over the things that make territory valuable, the metals buried under it, the chips built from them, the empires powered by both. Knowledge isn't rebellion anymore, it's armor. It's the only protection in a game rigged by people who understand the rules better than you do. Because when the next embargo begins, when the next supply shock hits, the uninformed will call it a supply chain crisis, or a market correction, or bad luck. You'll know what it really is. Power reasserting itself one element at a time. Material control, strategic dominance. The future being written by whoever controls the periodic table. This is money's hidden history. And the truth? It was always hidden in plain sight. Hidden in plain sight until the bill came due.